COD fans, welcome back. Good to see you. It's been a while, which is a lot of the reason why I'm making this video. Now, before I get into this one specifically, I want to just kind of talk about Rostermania as a whole. Now, I've gone out on social media. I've told you guys before in videos, I don't like making videos that are based on rumors. I like to wait for at least sources that can confirm that things are going to happen, whether there's an official announcement or not. I like to know that there's close sources. However, I kind of miss making COD videos. So what I've gone ahead and done is I have a direct link with Crone from the CDL Intel account. We're working very closely with one another, and he's going to be providing some, as well as myself. I have a couple of sources here that I've been kind of talking to about some of these roster changes that he's been kind of insinuating at. We built a little bit of a confidence index as far as how confident we are in some of the calls that are happening. Again, I don't like to make clickbait videos based on rumors. Again, the whole Scump retiring thing is a bunch of BS, and I'm not going to make a video on that just for clicks. So you're not going to see that kind of content from me. You're going to get some actual, real, responsible journalism coming through. But I didn't want to just sit here and let Rostermania kind of come and go without really making videos until things are confirmed. So in order to kind of make things a little bit more unified and make this more of a conversation, because let's be honest, you can find this information at a click of a button. There's a reason why you wanted to come to this channel. We're bringing back in Andy Neckrich, my co-caster Panda. He'll be joining us for a lot of these style of videos, maybe just this one. I don't know. I don't know what he wants to do. Andy, it's good to have you here. I'm just glad we get a chance to kind of talk about some of these players from the past and how we're looking forward to them in the future.
Yeah, just always happy to come back and well, I guess what we'll see. I don't even know what I want next week, alone for what I want for breakfast. But when it comes down to these players, these teams, and everything that's going to be setting up for the COD scene going into the next game too, I think the biggest conversation of it all is, which is why these rumors really come around, is the future.
Let's talk about it, because just about, well, I will say half of the teams that we know for sure are going to be confirmed for next year have essentially leaked or at least hinted at what a roster will look like. Some of them varying from literally a possible roster list of about 8 players down to maybe specifically what the roster will look like. We'll start with the least confident predictions going to the most confident predictions, starting down in Florida. Looking at a roster, and I don't have the list up here on this graphic because there's just too many names to list, but we'll kind of go through it. We're looking at potentially Mox, Skies, Silly, Frosty, Pristini, GodRx, and Apathy. And honestly, as you take a look at what these players did throughout their time during Black Ops 4, this is a pretty wide array of players, going all the way from your dedicated hard-strung anchor ARs all the way up into your entry frag SMGs.
Mox really popped off, I believe, on the second to last showing there during the Black Ops 4 days as well with Gen G. Had a little bit of a slip up going into champs. Obviously, as you all know, fell out of the group stage with his roster. But I think paired along with Pristini, any member that you kind of jostle around with all these names kind of thrown with, Apathy really comes to mind for me too. Another diamond in the rough patch there, stuck down with EG, apart from a couple different pop-off moments. But with Pristini, I mean, remember Pristini specifically for their Maddox play on a United was pretty damn good, pretty damn consistent at that too. So you added a couple players that are able to kind of widen out that shine that Pristini brings to the party. I think that Florida would definitely have a good roster to be shaken around with. But
Yeah.
again, it's not confirmed, of course.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of one of those things that's like, it feels like weighing options. And again, there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't understand about franchising, that players can be expensive. So when it's kind of almost feels like you're picking and choosing here. You've got Mox and Skies, mostly dedicated ARs. You've got Silly and Frosty, very similar play styles of how they run a Maddox. You have Pristini and GodRx, very similar styles of how they run their Maddox. Then you have Apathy. You can kind of throw him in conversation with maybe Pristini when he picks up an SMG here or there. Kind of the same thing with Silly, but he's more of the dedicated SMG player. So it kind of feels like Florida's way in their options. Now, based off these lists, it is important to note that CDL Intel puts this at a confidence rating of only 40%. And the only reason why it is as high as it is because you're looking at, what, 7 different names here. So out of those, you're probably going to see a couple of those eventually get locked in by Florida. But that's just kind of what we're looking at so far. Now, going to New York, the opposite side of the United States here, north to south, we're looking at a pretty solid roster with a lot of mostly a little bit more confidence as far as what we're looking at there. That roster that we're looking at is very much potentially going to consist of Attach, Zuma, Temp, Accuracy, and Zero. And there's the potential that maybe Kenny's been in the conversation, but this is another roster that I think really kind of shows you a lot of flexibility from that AR to the SMG, but more importantly is how much freaking experience is on this roster.
Yeah, I was going to talk about experience and playing with one another too. I mean, you look at Zero and Zuma, and their time spent with FaZe. Obviously, you talk about a former Flex player going over to the AR for Zero, and you and I talked about it before. Actually, we went live with this recording, and I mean, you look into the flexibility in between the SMG play plus the Maddox from Zuma from Black Ops 4, plus the I guess the longer sidelines between the AR and I guess with the Paladin too that Zero was able to showcase on
Mhm.
phase as well. I mean, you put that into the weapons that are about to be coming through from Modern Warfare. That's a lot of fun that they could end up having. And again, with the right supporting staff, the right supporting players rather, with these strong members coming from FaZe Clan, I mean, like, yeah, that looks like a pretty strong roster. New York is always pretty good when it comes down to franchising and picking up strong rosters.
And Revan as the head coach, you know he's going to be picking up players that he knows has experience. He knows how they play. You don't have to worry. Again, EG dealt with roster changes every single bit throughout the entirety of the year.
It's
Revan
true.
was kind of fine that core group of five. And it didn't really come with as much success as I think he would have wanted, at least not until the end. I mean, at the end, they started to look pretty solid. But kind of going to a different theme and a different style. A lot of you guys have been interested in what's going on with the OpTic spot, the OpTic Immortal spot that's happening out of LA. Now, a lot of things have kind of hit the fan when it came down to the rumors and the drama of, oh, Scump doesn't want to play with Karma anymore and Crim6 is getting bullied. Like, I'm sorry, we don't do content like that here. What we do know, though, is that we are looking at a team of two, if not a team of three, which will consist of three of the same members from OpTic. That would be TJ Halley, Dashy, and then possibly also Scump in the conversation. That is a conversation that's been picking up as of the last 24 hours. And honestly, I was surprised, Andy, that none of these three players got secured during that week last week where if you were a CWL team and you bought into a CDL, you can re-sign your players. I was kind of surprised that the OpTic Immortals franchise didn't secure at least two of these players.
Yeah, it's like you even said too, back when we were talking about Florida. The thing about different players too, those contracts they have buyouts, so you can end up
Exactly.
trying to go for a buyout on, say, TJ. I mean, remember TJ was more than impressive, especially going through champs. More than impressive in the consistency that they were able to bring the fire for OpTic all the way through. That could be a player that, say, even Seattle, Atlanta, New York, any one of these teams that have money extra inside the change, or even Dallas too. They're gonna end up saying, well, maybe we want a strong frontliner such as TJ, the one that's going to be able to be versatile with the upcoming weapons that are going to be meta per se for Modern Warfare, and that would be pretty exciting to see. But I think again, talking about core rosters, I talked about with Zuma and Zero previously on New York. You put that along with some of the other names that were kind of thrown around the ring to boot as well. I mean, you got Formal from LG, you got Kenny and Slasher both from 100 Thieves. I mean, think about how strong that three-member roster of TJ, Dashy, and Scump could be with Kenny and Slasher. I mean, you
Oh,
put
yeah.
a lot of veteran shit, you put a lot of pop off potential in between those five members, and that could be something really scary to look at because I mean, there's one thing about OpTic, right? I mean, they got the wins, they have the strength to show behind as many tournament showcasings, apart from maybe one slip up through the CWL roundabout. But it's one thing that you have to be looking for is you want a strong roster going into this next game, into this next championship series, because without that kind of veteranship and that lead and that ability to at least show on when the pressure's thrown against you the most, I think you can find it with those five players, and I think OpTic really has something going for them here.
I would be interested to see how that team dynamic would work. Let's go on to something a little bit different, though. This is not affiliated with the city as of yet. Scraps has been playing with our emotions on the TL over the last couple of hours, but we are expecting at a 70% confidence rating that there will be a team of three consisting of the twins of Scraps and Wuskin with the addition of Dylan. I will just say this: if there were to be a London roster, that's not confirmed. There's no real rumors that that's going to happen. But if there were to be, that would be an insane start to a foundation of a roster out of those three Brits.
Listen, I think that any team that gets Dylan on there, whether you're going to be UK base, EU base, you're going to be NA base, I think that you definitely have a strong member heading for to you as well. You remember what the amount of work that Dylan was able to put in for reciprocity. I feel like every other time like that the camera was on this player specifically, you always saw something special coming out from Dylan. I would say at the beginning of the CWL run that Dylan was probably one of the more underrated, but at the end of champs even you couldn't speak about Dylan enough. Dylan was always there for reciprocity, and I think you're definitely right that if you end up building a London roster with a couple locals, yeah, why not? Right?
Absolutely.
Might as well.
Be a lot of fire, definitely, in that arena if there ever would be another home game in the London environment. Skipping to the opposite side, though, talking about Seattle. Again, this is a team franchise that we do not know a lot about yet. There have been a couple of whispers without Luminosity potentially running it, similarly to how they currently run and manage the Vancouver Titans, although the investment firm behind that is the Aquilini Investment Group, which owns Rogers Center and the Vancouver Canucks and things of that nature. Is there potential that Seattle be in the mix? It's looking more and more like yes, and we only say that because the whispers that have been floating around are about pro players of this 5-man roster coming up, about who could potentially be at Seattle. We're looking at the potential of Octane, Enable, Arcides, Envoy, and Slacked. And we're giving this a confidence rating of 75%, and I'll be flat out honest, that is an absolutely disgusting roster.
I think going with Envoy, again, another good pull from Gen G, but as a whole, I mean, when you look at the way the 100 Thieves were able to play out through all of CWL, it's just consistency on top of consistency. At least you know what you're going to be getting out of any one of those players trying to fill in with your roster. You just want to make sure that they're at least going to be able to fit, like you were talking about earlier. I mean, there were some players that maybe you would have a little bit of an ego check at the door, depending on a couple of these players, the way that the in-game comms would probably end up working. But I mean, when you have RCD, Slacked, and Envoy, Enable, and Octane, I mean, like you said, stacked. Yeah, that sounds a little right when you're talking about these numbers.
Terrifying roster, to be sure. And then to finish things off as far as rosters go, at this point in time, it's looking more like a 95% certainty that Atlanta will be picking up Simp, Abizi, Celium, Priesta, and Major Maniac. And this, I think, on record will be the shortest esports roster in history, just based on height alone. Let's be honest, I don't know if Simp and Abizi together could hit 11 feet between the two of them. But beyond that, though, this is a very young roster that has proved itself so far as these individuals as a whole, and one that I think it's just going to, the leadership is the thing that I think when you look at this roster you're missing. You're looking at Major Maniac and Priest to maybe take the rings, but I'm more interested to see what kind of a coach could potentially tailor a roster like this, as we are, again, as we mentioned, expecting this roster to come to fruition.
You see a lot of franchising, especially going on, that they'll go with the younger rosters because of the longevity behind it. Maybe it could be a coachability thing as well. Some things that you might be able to teach some of these younger players too. But you get the front runners of Simp and Abizi coming from EU again. EU United had a hell of a run through CWL. If you don't believe me, go back and watch some of those tournaments. I dare you. But I mean, when you pair that along with young blood and you put that into the mix with a coach that's very like hot and ready to take the next step. I mean, you could have the shortest roster. You could also have the wisest roster. But at the end of the day, when you have the youngest roster, it's drive and commitment to being to learning, if you will, something that you'd be able to see through a lot of different younger rosters too. I mean, you take a look at even probably the sister league for what COD is about to have in the Overwatch League. You take a look at what San Francisco Shock's been able to do, along with the younger roster as it's been turning the time of a new age. And that's one thing you have to be concerned with if you're any one of these teams that are about to be going up against these five specifically. In strength alone, they stand, but through their young drive, that could be an ace in the hole, especially when it comes down to the running into a tournament bracket.
And I will say, I think just generally speaking, you look at Simp, Abizi, and Celium first off, and you say, damn, that's nuts. And then Priest and Major Maniac bring a lot of that kind of resiliency behind them. But I think this roster will be made by whatever coach gets signed on to Atlanta. We don't know much about what that will look like, but I think you're going to need a pretty all-star coach to lock those guys in to be a major contender at the end of the day.
Someone they trust, too.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually a really strong point as well. We could talk about that for hours. But one thing you may have noticed as we're kind of wrapping up this episode was that we just mentioned a lot of players from FaZe Clan that are apparently either rumored to be going spots or very well are going to be going spots, which makes it look that FaZe Clan will not be participating in franchising come the CWL season. If they do, they're only going to be holding on to the scraps of their benefit, most of those former FC Black players and things of that stuff. But we are still waiting on 3 more cities. Only 2 of Seattle doesn't end up coming through. And again, it feels like it's getting down to the wire, but I know Andy and I can tell you all day long about how Overwatch League literally didn't come together until like the week before the actual regular season started. There's actually teams that missed the preseason because their roster was not ready to go yet when that happened in season number 1. So what other cities could be potential? Again, we mentioned it in a video before. Houston, with the potential of Hex going with Lee Zeben, the guy that owns the Houston Outlaws, I would say is a potential for still being a roster spot. Madrid or somewhere in Spain from the Heretics perspective. London and CDL C9. You kind of heard Jack talk about C9 and their interest in Call of Duty and how they're interested, but are they? And then beyond that, you're also looking at a couple of other cities that are still have a wide investment when it comes down to what they've been able to do in Overwatch League. Boston and Philly specifically, but also San Francisco with NRG.
And there's so many different areas across the entire globe that that have the same burning passion as you at home that is watching this this video, of course, that it's a passion for a good competitive Call of Duty. And it's not without saying that there's probably a good chuck full of individuals from each parts of the world that are willing to kind of put it all on the line to represent their country in that same way as well. I mean, we talked about earlier with Scraps, Weskin, and Dylan representing London, representing their home country too. That's one thing. But when you get to represent your city from that country, that's another step in the process as well. And even like Shift was saying, when it was like just a few days before the Overwatch League actually started too, and there were still teams being finalized for rosters and everything. There's a lot of time for all of these rumors to either come true or to fall flat on their face, and that's probably one of the most exciting part about it. What countries are going to be represented? Where the coach is going? What are the teams doing? What are the owners up to? Like this is why our Twitter league, or our Twitter feed rather, is going absolutely bananas right now because there's always something new to unfold.
And that's another reason why I haven't done as many videos lately.
It's hard. It's hard.
I will guarantee this is a channel that you'll come back to and you'll say that Shift maybe only got it wrong a couple of times. I'm not gonna be one of those guys that has a video that's just completely wrong. I will absolutely stand by that fashion. But we went a little bit longer than we anticipated. Hopefully that this brought a little bit to the light. I know a lot of this information is a little bit on the older side as far as what's been reported, but I wanted to add something to the mix that was different from anything else that's out there. The confidence meter hopefully gives you guys at least a little bit of a look as far as what you should be buying into and what you could potentially be ignoring when you see it on your own Twitter feed. Again, that's Andy. I'm Alan. It's good to see you guys. Hopefully we'll catch you back for the next one. Until then, hope you keep holding it down. Later. Bye-bye.